welcome back to my channel. It's me, Andy. If you are new here, I am a Johannesburg based flight attendant, and today I am bringing you guys a story time of my scary flight experiences. Yay! So with all things considered, my scary flight experiences haven't actually been that bad because I've flown with people who have been flying much longer than me, who have experienced flights that have been way worse than mine. But I figured, you know what, let me just tell you the story. With my luck, there probably will be more stories to tell in due time. So I'm going to tell you guys 3 stories in this video, and the first story is not actually even mine. This happened to one of my friends and I woke up thinking about it and I thought I would just add it here, so hopefully it's okay that I'm telling you guys this story. So a few months ago, my friend was operating a flight and this was her first flight of the day, and that day they experienced 3 rejected takeoffs. Wow. Just wow. So I've never actually experienced a rejected takeoff, which is when you are basically rolling down the active runway about to take off at top speed and the pilots notice something wrong and they press full brakes and everything comes to a stop and you feel your heart coming out of your chest and you're checking your body that everything is still intact and you just freak out. I'm kidding. That's just what I would do. That's a rejected takeoff. I've never experienced that before. I have experienced a go around before, which is when we're about to come into land and you're just off of the ground and the pilot decides, nope, not landing here, and they put full power and we go right back up, turn around and try again for our landing. Like I said, they experienced 3 of these on this particular day. What happened was they got on the runway for the first flight, going down, you know, full brakes, rejected takeoff. They went back to the gate, checked everything out, system looked good. And then they tried again and they had to reject the takeoff again. It wasn't even a very big deal. It wasn't even something super serious. As far as I understand, it was the cargo door that had an issue, and basically, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not an aviation enthusiast, but basically the doors on an aircraft have these rubber seals around them, and once the aircraft gets pressurized, these seals are supposed to inflate to ensure that the aircraft is completely sealed and that it's safe for you to be in it at 45,000 feet. So on this day, what happened was every time they were going down the runway at full speed, an alarm would go off in the flight deck saying that there's an issue with this seal on the cargo door, that it wasn't like closing properly. I don't think it would have gotten to the point where like bags were falling out of the cargo during the flight or anything like that, but it was serious enough that the pilots thought that rather let's be safe, let's practice on the side of caution, and rather be safe than sorry, which is what they're trained to be. They decided to reject those takeoffs, and the thing is, they had to reject these takeoffs 3 times, and on the 3rd time they taxied back to the gate, and once they got there, about 20 passengers asked to get off of that plane. I don't blame them. If I wasn't a crew member and if I was also in a situation like that, especially considering we have so many first-time flyers on our flights on a daily basis, that I can imagine that that's a scary thing. And I'm sure a lot of them just didn't want to like test fate and be like, okay, well, we've done it 3 times, are we really willing to go a 4th time, you know, or anything like that. So I feel bad for them, but the captain did explain to them. The captain even came out into the cabin and explained to them that it wasn't that serious, but they'd rather be safe and they'd rather have it checked out than just carry on going and have it get worse in the air. Insane that they experienced that at like 6 o'clock in the morning, I think it was. Wow. I feel really bad for the passengers that felt the need to get off. I can imagine that it was a really scary experience for them, and even for the crew, as far as my friend told me that it actually was a little, I think the first 2 takeoffs weren't that bad, but the 3rd one, they just had to brake so much harder. They were already going much faster, so yeah, I can just imagine that it must have been not a pleasant experience, at least. But just an update, the 4th time was successful and they made it to their destination safely. My second story is from about 1.5 years ago when I was still flying for a charter company, and I was on a deadhead back to Johannesburg. A deadhead is when the company flies you as a passenger from point A to point B, and basically I had been operating that whole day, and it was, I think, my day 5 that I had been in Harare, operating out of Harare, and this was the day for me to come home. So I think I operated the first 2 flights of the day or something, and on this flight I was in a passenger seat in uniform still, so that if anything happened I can be of assistance, but I was coming back to Johannesburg as a passenger. And I was not the only one. You guys know Natasha. Hi. From many previous vlogs. She was flying with me back then, and she was also deadheading home, and I think we had about 2 pilots and an engineer with us as well, so all of us took the last 2 rows of the aircraft. Anyway, moving on, we were on the plane. There was a storm happening all around, basically in Harare and in Johannesburg. It was raining, really coming down, and we were flying, you know, having a fun old time, chatting, catching up, you know, talking about all the nonsense we usually talk about. I don't know what it was that made both Natasha and I look out the window at the exact same time, and about 2 seconds later this massive lightning bolt hits the aircraft wing. We were like, what just happened? And the both of us just started like freaking out internally, but you know, as crew, we're so well trained not to show that we're freaking out because there were passengers in front of us. The pilots and the engineer were sitting behind us, so we were just like, did you guys just see that? Because we just saw that, and are we going down, and how much time do we have left? Should we start saying our goodbyes? And the engineers and pilots told us no, it's absolutely normal for lightning to strike an aircraft, which it actually is. I found out later on, I didn't know that before, but anyway, the way that the aircraft is built, they have like exit points, and I don't know how all that works, but basically it was completely safe. The thing that made us freak out is the aircraft, the specific aircraft that we were on back at our old company, and this particular aircraft that we were on was just, I mean, that aircraft, there was always something with it. It's just that it was kind of an unlucky aircraft. Like, things would just go wrong when people were flying on that aircraft. Picture like me, like always walking into walls and tripping over my own feet. I am that aircraft. So of course, what are the chances I'd be sitting in that aircraft and lightning would strike us? Interestingly enough, there was absolutely no physical damage to the aircraft, not a single like hole on her or anything like that. We landed and she was perfect. Like, the maintenance team was honestly shocked that the aircraft landed without any damage whatsoever. Like, it was just insane. But that moment of terror that we felt before we knew like exactly like what goes on was terrifying. Okay, now onto my last story. This story and this event, I'm pretty sure, was the scariest experience that I've had as a cabin crew member. This was when I was still flying charter, so I was a single cabin crew member. I was the only flight attendant on board, and I remember having a full flight that day. We had 50 passengers. What happened was we were taking off, and it was the last flight of the day, and no, we were not flying on the unlucky aircraft that I just mentioned previously. It was about 9 p.m. I want to say, because I remember our last flight of the day was usually around about 9 p.m. and I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with the procedures, but usually if you're taking off at night, you switch cabin lights off during the takeoff, just so that if anything does happen and we have to evacuate, your eyes are already kind of used to the darkness, basically. And so we're sitting in the pitch black darkness and we start taking off, and I start smelling smoke or fire or something, basically along those lines. Like, you know when you smell something burning, you know? So I started smelling that, and anybody in aviation knows that that is the worst possible thing that you can smell. That is the scariest thing that you can smell. A fire is the worst thing that can happen to an aircraft, because they grow so quickly and they just engulf the entire aircraft. That for me was a very scary moment. I started smelling this smoke or something burning. I wasn't sure what it was. Within 2 seconds of me smelling the smoke, there were just like 10 call bells going off. Like, all the passengers were pressing their call bells because I'm sure that they could smell it too, and they were hoping that I could do something about it. And the thing you don't know is, when you are on takeoff as a flight attendant, I can't stand up. I can't get up out of my jump seat. The same way you as a passenger can't get up off of your seat during takeoff, I also can't. I'm not exempt of that rule. It is very unsafe for anybody to be just standing around, walking around during takeoff or landing. The smell got so strong so quickly from the time we put full power of engines rolling down the runway to getting in the air, it just smelled so strong. I honest to God thought that I was gonna see smoke. So I switch on the lights as soon as we like got off of the runway. I switched on the lights and I couldn't see smoke. So I was like, okay, but there's still something wrong. So actually you're not supposed to call the pilots during takeoff and landing, because that is a very high pressure time for them as well. That is when they are the most focused. You don't want to disturb them during that time unless in an emergency. And I honest to God believed that we were having an emergency, that something was really wrong, that the plane was possibly on fire and I maybe just couldn't see the smoke yet, that, you know, our lives are in danger. So in that time I felt it okay to call my captain and just tell him what's going on. And as soon as he picked up, he said, I can smell it too, don't worry, it's not a fire. Which, oh my gosh, that captain was the absolute best. Flying with him was always a breeze. And he continued to explain to me that a certain part in the engine had just been replaced before we did our flight, and with that, on the first flight with that new part, usually, I don't know if it's the smell of the oil or something like that, that will occur, you know. So to them it was completely normal. The pilots were like so used to this because they'd done so many flights where this particular part had been replaced, but for me it was the first time, you know. So yeah, I asked him to also please make an announcement to the passengers, just explaining that, because, you know, obviously like I don't exactly understand the technicalities of it and I didn't want to mess up an announcement to them. So yeah, he did that because the call bells were still going on. So he made an announcement shortly after switching off the seatbelt signs, and he explained to them what was going on and not to worry. And after that, I walked down the cabin, because after takeoff I'm supposed to walk down to the cabin and unlock the toilet door, which is at the back of the aircraft. And on my way down I still had about 2 or 3 passengers asking me what's wrong, asking me if the plane's on fire, because passengers will always do that even after the pilot made a very audible announcement explaining the situation. They'll still always ask just to double check, you know, and just to make sure that I'm not worried about anything, which I truly wasn't after I had spoken to my captain and after his announcement and everything like that. So yeah, it was an interesting flight, but the rest of it actually went off without a hitch. Everything was fine. At some point the captain actually came out into the cabin just to double check that I was okay and that the passengers were okay and that they understood his announcement and everything. Mostly he just wanted to go and pee, but whatever. On his way, he ended up doing all of that. As soon as people talk about scary situations in flight, that is the experience that I think of. So yeah, those are my scary flight experiences. I really hope that you guys enjoyed this video. Please give it a massive thumbs up if you did, and don't forget to subscribe if you are new here. Otherwise, I will be seeing you all in the next video. Please continue to spread good vibes and be kind. Bye guys.